Hello, and welcome to the Anime Explorations podcast. I'm Alex.
I'm Tora.
I'm David.
And for those who are just tuning in, we are a monthly anime book club podcast where we watch an anime series or a reasonable portion of a longer series and then talk about it. Of course, before we start the series itself, we also chit-chat about what we're currently watching and other stuff going on in the anime industry and outside it that's relevant and that sort of thing. So stuff I'm watching this season, well, aside from this that already started from last time, new season of My Hero Academia started.
Yeah, it did.
Welcome back to the Trauma Factory.
And the manga is wrapping up.
Yeah, like I feel like they could just finish out the manga with this season of the anime, maybe do it a longer season, because like where we're at now in the manga, we're basically moving into denouement. So it's entirely possible that like by the time we hit episode 12 of the anime, the manga will just be done.
It's always interesting when you've like lived for years with these characters and you're watching their journeys come to an end. And for many, it's very satisfying, and for others, you're like, "Oh, come on!" But I mean, that's life.
I've had a fun time watching fellow Americans react to Star and Stripes episodes, and basically the interesting ways that Americans are portrayed in anime. Like, there could be a whole meeting on that, but yeah, it's fun.
I mean, as a whole, My Hero Academia is a very Japanese take on very American superhero tropes. I really like it. It's totally different, but in that respect, it really reminds me of Tiger and Bunny, which is one of my all-time favorite shows.
It was great. It's on Netflix if anybody wants to watch it. We recommend
it. It is edited on Netflix, and they took out like all the product placement, which is one of the things that made the original Tiger and Bunny so great, was because they were very much corporate superheroes. Like, they have logos emblazoned on their uniforms. Blue Rose like straight up has Blue Rose straight up has Pepsi running up her leggings.
You do lose something with the loss of brand names.
I would love to, once My Hero Academia properly wraps, if I could like find someone with like a background in superhero comics. We've had a guest in the past with Tom Merritt to do an episode, like to do some episodes on My Hero Academia. It'd be very interesting seeing someone with a Western superhero background be able to talk about it at length.
When you say background, do you mean like worked on it, or
like,
has? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, has worked in the field. Like my first choice. Although I approached him about possibly doing some stuff for the podcast, and he respectfully declined. He's got stuff to do, and he's a very busy writer, and he doesn't really do podcasts much anyways. I did reach out to Kurt Busiek, because if you're going to get somebody who has an encyclopedic knowledge of superheroes and their history, who's currently around and you don't need time travel to get a hold of, Kurt Busiek's high on the list.
Yeah. Astro City.
That was kind of one of my swing for the fences picks, which didn't pan out, but again, that's fine. Busiek's a busy person. He's well known as a writer and he's a actively working writer, so I get it.
Yeah, and then there's the writers who would be so great to talk to, but I feel like I just spend most of the time yelling at them. I'm speaking specifically of Grant Morrison. Fantastic writer. We have very different takes on storytelling, and that man loves to tell stories about storytelling. Not always in a way that is well integrated into the story. Like he very much is in that deconstruction Alan Moore style. Though I will say he is like he is much less of a he's not a miserable bastard like Alan Moore is.
Yeah.
You know, we should move on because superhero comics are something I can talk about for many hours.
It's true. Other anime, yes, we're watching the new My Hero Academia episodes. We're continuing to watch Kaiju number 8, which is still delightful.
Yeah.
I love it so much.
Spice and Wolf, I'm watching that. That's still great. Hollow is very the animation for Hollow's ears and the ticks with her ears and her tail are just so tremendously cute.
Dungeon Meshi or Delicious in Dungeon, still watching that, still loving that.
Go Loser Ranger, which was how they decided to name Sentai Daishikaku, which is a complete deconstruction of the Super Sentai, a very Japanese superhero style. And that's proving to be very interesting. I'm enjoying it.
And I'm watching the new season of Sound Euphonium for my band kid fix.
And I keep watching Konosuba. I'm not. Yeah, we went over this last time. It's weirdly compelling.
And you've been watching that one about the slime.
Yes, that time I got reincarnated as the slime. I also started watching a new show this season. And it's an interesting take on the isekai. Chilling in another world with my level 2 super cheat powers. It's interesting because it is an isekai, but our protagonist was taken from a completely separate fantasy world. And he's very happy that the one he got transported in is a much nicer place. Like he meets the demi-humans and he's like, "You're free. You're not slaves here?" And they're like, "No." He's like, "Oh, this is so much better."
There's got to be a better phrase than demi-humans, non-humans, or humanoids.
I think beastkin is actually worse.
Or yeah, I know, like that. I use the suffix folk, like cat folk, dog folk, etc. It seems the least pejorative.
I think for the cat the cat human things, I think the preferred term should be perfolk because it sounds like merfolk, but they're cats.
Oh God!
See what you did there, and I don't like
it. That's because you were.
The genre
attention.
doesn't need more puns.
It doesn't, but that doesn't mean I won't add some.
Goodness gracious!
Correct. I think that's mostly it. There was a few shows that I tried to watch, but I couldn't. Our son really likes racing, so I checked out the new racing anime this season, High Speed Etoile, and it was boring. I don't know how they made racing boring.
I always thought racing was boring. So
well, there are shows that have made racing very compelling. We will probably end up talking about some of them at some point. Thinking here of like Overtake.
Initial D is one of the classics of racing animes.
And the Next Generation series, MF Ghost, also like while it's not dedicated to drift racing, it's more lap-based racing. It still managed to do a good job of making that interesting and compelling, and that sort of thing. To the point that, like, I've started listening to the Shift F1 podcast, which is a Formula One racing podcast by a bunch of former Giant Bomb and GameSpot people, like Danny O'Dwyer and that sort of thing. And I did suggest and said, "Hey, we're looking for more racing stuff." I did suggest both of those shows there to them, giving explanations for both and potential issues with either one. I I would simply put Overtake as a much stronger recommendation, as the problem with MF Ghost that I think makes it a tricky recommend, outside from like getting really into the weeds of the mechanics of racing, is that the artist of the original manga, and this carries over the anime, looked at the kind of outfits worn by Japanese race queens and said, I could make this sexier. And by sexier, I mean looks more like something a stripper would wear.
So it's full on drag racing.
So yeah, that makes it a tricky recommend. Not something I would necessarily recommend if their son's looking for something racing related. I'd say Overtake's a much better series in that regard.
Awesome.
Other news related stuff. Two stories that are slightly loosely interrelated. One is Mamoru Oshii has announced that he's doing a 4K remaster of Angel's Egg, and they've set up international film distribution for the film with the company that has partnered with G-Kids in the past, which means perhaps at long last we'll finally get a legal release of Angel's Egg. The last I'd heard anything about it was actually when Yoshitaka Amano was at KomuraCon the year before the pandemic, and he was asked about this during one of his panels, and he basically said, yeah, the rights are in absolute hell, like complete limbo. Nobody knows who has the rights to what. So we don't know if it'll ever get a new release in Japan, never mind the outside of Japan. So good news is that is cleared up, and Angel's Egg will get a official release, or is likely going to get an official release. So that's excellent. It's also one of shows where I'm like, this is sufficiently artsy that I don't know. Like I watch it, I enjoyed it, and I was like, clearly there's some stuff, visual metaphors and symbolism of this that went way the heck over my head.
Big shout out to the fact that so many anime films are making their way into American cinema, even for limited release.
We just got tickets to the Haikyuu film.
We did. We're gonna go see the dumpster battle.
I don't know. All the translation I saw, it was the junkyard, not the dumpster. Don't know why they called it
either way.
Crows versus cats.
Yeah, I mean, back when I was in high school, the only things that were getting releases over here were Studio Ghibli movies, and even those were in like specific theaters. It wasn't like the big Disney distribution releases that they got today. So,
I mean, I think in high school, I went to like a super limited release of Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust in theaters.
I went to a release with my high school anime club of Metropolis, Osamu Tezuka's Metropolis.
Oh yeah.
Which I own on Blu-ray, and we will definitely do an episode on some point in the future.
I mean, it's an amazing film.
I got a major deep dive into film history, but particularly the silent film era when I was at art school, because I loved it so much. So
because you took a film history
and I
specialized in silent film.
I bought so many silent movies. I bought a Busby Berkeley collection. I mean, come on, guys. Let's do it. Let's talk about cross-pollination of ideas between the cinema of the East and the West. I'm all for it.
That man made the same movie 2 years apart, and he literally numbered them 1933 and 1935. It's Gold Diggers is the same movie twice. It's not bad either time. I'm just saying.
Good times, though. Good times.
This ties into our other news story, a slightly more tragic one. So technically, loosely, Angel's Egg had been released in the US once in the past as edited into part of a movie called Into the Aftermath, which was a film made basically because the producers of it had licensed Angel's Egg and then wasn't quite sure what to do with it. That producer being Roger Corman, who passed away since our last episode. Corman also distributed some other anime in the United States as well, including the Galaxy Express 39 movies. Or at least the first two, Galaxy Express 39 and Adieu Galaxy Express 39.
Are you supposed to say 39?
Yes, that is the formal way it is described. I believe that's how they use it to refer to like rail lines and that sort of thing, which is what the Galaxy Express train in question is. Because Lichi Matsumoto was, for the time, among other things, a train otaku.
Clearly.
I think we've all been there.
But yeah,
maybe not the train thing, but
yeah, Corman. I mean, he has a limited footprint within the realm of anime, but he has a massive footprint in cinema. Certainly, some of his films as well has also gone on to influence anime creators on the other side of things, with stuff like Battle Beyond the Stars, alongside Star Wars and various other things. And creators who he worked with Corman also went on to tremendous careers, and their works have also gone on to inspire anime. I'm thinking here, in particular, James Cameron. Also getting the anime connection there with Battle Angel Alita. So yeah, Corman was a unique, feels like a backhanded compliment, and in some ways it is, and in other ways it wasn't, because when you have a body of work where you churn out movies that fast, they can't all be winners. And if you've seen Mystery Science Theater 3000, you know they weren't.
Yeah, but sometimes even the losers are valuable.
I mean, Roger Corman. So many interviews with him, you can't say that he's in it for the art. Roger Corman was in it for the money. And he occasionally made art. That it seems like the nicest thing I can say about him.
I think that, yeah. But on the other hand, he occasionally made art, but he provided a mechanism for people to get in the industry who did make art.
Very much like an 18th century patron of the arts. He did the funding. An actual artist did the work. And some of it was great, some of it was not.
Generally, a patron is providing funds to an artist because they enjoy the art, not because they want to make money off of it.
Well,
I said generally, not exclusively.
I think probably a closer comparison might be like the people who hired the rooms full of composers in like Tin Pan Alley and that sort of thing, who wrote numerous jingles and various pieces of music throughout the turn of the 20th century and that sort of thing. But they certainly, those composers were, some of them were in it for a buck, but others were certainly in it to make art. And maybe some of the people who ran those companies wrote music themselves and occasionally managed to put out some classic pieces of music as well.
Yeah.
So an interesting legacy, but definitely one to at least recognize.
Yeah,
as a legacy. Yeah,
the man, like, for all the good and ill we can say about him, and we could do an entire podcast just on like a decade of Roger Corman's films.
Right.
Not even the whole body. That could be an
prolific.
entire series. Yes. He had a tremendous impact on the industry. On numerous industries.
Yeah. Cinema and potentially for anime, and the distribution, both in terms of in Japan and the distribution of anime in the United States, would be very different if it wasn't for Corman. Yeah.
So a moment of
It's a glass to Corman.
And now let's talk about JoJo.
Yeah.
JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
So this is we are discussing this episode, the first 19 episodes of Diamond Is Unbreakable. That's roughly about the first half. And it kind of goes to the point where we get through introducing our main sort of core cast of characters and setting up a larger mystery for the series.
Welcome to my JoJo Stan podcast.
So,
to be clear, did you say stand or stand?
Oh my god, it works either way. That's good. That's good.
I was genuinely asking the question.
I'm a stand for stands.
So, when I was getting into this particular season, one of the comparisons I'd heard made for the season was like, oh, this is the Twin Peaks season. Because every season, there's like a certain number, it wears its influences pretty clearly on its sleeve. And Twin Peaks, I saw the Twin Peaks stuff coming up towards the end of this block of 19, but I think for this first chunk, what came to mind more was, I guess I'd call it the two big Stevens of American popular culture, Steven Spielberg and Stephen King. The town where this season is, or this overall storyline is set, Morio, like while it is a Japanese town, like the building architecture and that sort of thing we're getting feels very much like sort of the Spielbergian American suburbia kind of setup. Where it's not the density of, say, Tokyo, but it doesn't have the rural agrarian feel that you get with something like My Neighbor Totoro or Non Non Biyori or even Higurashi no Koro ni, where the housing designs look like American houses, like from a subdivision with similar looking lots, in some cases like identical architectural designs next to each other, that sort of thing. And then
absolutely correct, yes.
And then Stephen King comes in with the overlay of like the way that the scary crap plays out in this, and the particularly sort of exploitation-y way, right? If you look at, say, Stephen King short stories in particular, as opposed to the larger novels, and the way that kind of plays out there.
And the town is really like a background character in the show, and I really appreciate that about this season. Like in the show, they do an amazing job of giving you a sense of the layout of the place. See the school, you're familiar with that neighborhood. When you see JoJo's house, you're familiar with that neighborhood. You know, Okuyasu's house is the boarded up one. Rohan's house, also very distinctive. And so there's the docks, there's the restaurant. You get this sense of where everything is located in space. And they're running all over this town. One of my favorite bits is when Koichi gets kidnapped and he's taken to one of these vacation seasonal homes out by the sea cliffs, right? And everyone's like, oh, it's so isolated. It's way out here. There's a single payphone and no one's going to hear you scream. And like, that was very Stephen King to me, that like small vacation town vibe where weird shit is going on. I loved that.
Yeah, definitely very much that. Like part of it where I got towards the end where I'd say that the Twin Peaks thing came up is in Twin Peaks, in everything you're like the first two seasons and to a degree Fire Walk with Me, is you have the sense of the town having this assortment of weirdos, who the plot of storylines will evolve around as much, if not more so, than the mystery, though the mystery certainly plays in. But you have, like in Twin Peaks, you have Nadine and Big Ed, you have the log lady, you have the various oddballs of the Twin Peaks Sheriff's Department, that sort of thing. And by the end of the series, like we get to not the end of the series, but the end of as we approach episode 19, we shift from stand of the week, though we still are getting new stands each episode, each storyline, but we start getting this sense of the characters where they have their own lives outside of what's going on with the particular drama of the episode. And so while the storylines may involve a stand battle, or involve stand weirdness, they have a sense of like the characters will drift in and out based on what they're up to. May have a story where like Okuyasu will like play a major role throughout much of this block of episodes, but you may have a storyline where for a big chunk he's just kind of not there because it's actually about what somebody else is doing.
So much of the balls to the wall craziness that happens plays off well because you have such a grounded sense of the reality that takes place in this universe. Because it's not all crazy stuff. Everybody's got lives and families, and they live in a particular place, that does not change. And so when that really out there stuff starts happening, in some ways it's more jarring, and in other ways it wouldn't work so well if you didn't have that very grounded base to spring off of,
Well, speaking of, one thing that we definitely need to bring up with the animated adaptation of it is the shift in art styles from the previous series to this one.
If you let me talk about art style in this show, I will go on for forever.
In the manga, the art style began to shift with Diamond Is Unbreakable, and by the end, it was a noticeably different art style than how it started. Whereas with the animation, they have one consistent art style that is essentially what it was towards the end. And
very different from Stardust Crusaders.
Yes. People are built more...
slightly less superhero-ly.
Yeah. This is most notable with Jotaro, who is built very... he has the standard,
marine biologist Jotaro Kuja.
Yes, as we find out in the epilogue of the entire season, the place Jotaro has been going while people were on other things is he's been doing marine ecology work here, and we find out he got his PhD based on what he found in this town. And
we're getting a little ahead of ourselves because we're only through episode 19.
I know. But Jotaro is a character in this, but he is so much of a... I'm hesitant to even call him a supporting character so much as consistent cameos.
He comes in, he instigates the action by telling Josuke, so your dad, this guy named Joseph, and I see you have a stand. Good, that's one thing I don't have to explain. So first of all, the inherent comedy of this situation of Jotaro being the one to show up and be like, yeah, you're my grandfather's love child. That was amazing. Because he doesn't talk.
Jotaro.
And then Joseph shows up later and I could not help myself.
One of the issues I had with the shift in art style is that Joseph is portrayed as a very frail old man. And he definitely looks it in comparison to his previous portrayals. But for me, I'm having trouble. How much of that is actually he has become a frail old man, and how much of that is it's a different art style? Because Jotaro, compared to how he was before, is thinner. He is not nearly as buff, as muscular, as imposing.
But nobody is because
it's a shift from art styles. So,
although we can infer from the information the show gives us that Jotaro has kind of... he's been focusing on other things. He can't maintain his stand's time stop effect for as long anymore because he hasn't been in practice. Why would he be? He's been becoming an academic, apparently.
Helping run the Joestar Foundation.
Right. So, I really love the art style of this season. I love it so much.
I would love it so much more if they could just keep a consistent color palette.
I was just about to say, though, I love that. So the show will change color palettes between shots on a whim, and it's amazing. And I love it. And we're not talking boring color palettes either. This entire show is saturated in the most amazing comic book panel colors. You got mustard yellow, acid green, bright purple, just constantly. You've got grainy motion filter when dangerous things are happening. You've got action lines. You've got occasional automatopoeia popping up on screen, especially once reverb shows up. But even before that,
quick note for the name of this
is... Oh, sorry.
is That actually leads into a good little note discussion about one of the changes here is where the music references pop up is the music references now pop up instead of character names, stand names. So, for example, Reverb in the original Japanese version named Echoes after the Pink Floyd song, one of several Pink Floyd references in this season, including Crazy Diamond, which is our new JoJo, Josuke's stand name.
Although translated as Shining Diamond.
Not sure why, but all right.
Because Crazy Diamond's is closer to getting them sued, but Shine On Crazy Diamond is the whole thing. So the reference is still there, but it's further from lawsuit.
I don't know.
I mean, sometimes they just shorten the stand. Chili Pepper.
Chili Pepper, boom.
Obviously.
Easy.
The Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yep.
Is Harvest a reference?
Yes.
Yep. There's Rat, which is self-explanatory.
Yep.
Oh man.
Heaven's Door, also self-explanatory.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that is one of the most interesting stands. So the visual gag of people turning into books is incredible and horrifying. Yeah, but incredible. Minor quibble though. We watched the show on Hulu and the dub. Actually, I think and the sub too, because didn't we watch a couple of episodes sub the first time we watched this season?
Mm-hmm.
They don't translate writing on screen, and on the Rohan episodes, he's like reading Koichi's life story on his face, right? And it just shows the page with the Japanese characters on it, and I have no idea what it says. So I found that a little bit irritating.
Yeah, like for what it's worth, like I watched it on Netflix, and for what it's worth on there, it's pretty similar. Though most of the relevant stuff, Rohan Kishibe says out loud as well,
Yeah.
which helps.
You kind of figure it out from context.
So, figure what. Let's talk about our new characters. So we've got Josuke, Higashikata, who is our new JoJo, who is also sort of juvenile delinquent-ish, and.
But in
he gets a bad rap because he has a juvenile delinquent hairstyle.
He's got a pompadour, and also because if you mock his hair, he will wreck you.
That is his one berserk button. Well, that is his most prominent berserk button. His family is another one.
I'm delighted that they introduced this tendency from the first time you meet him, but it doesn't get explained until quite a few episodes later.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like, in contrast with Jotaro, I feel like Josuke is less of a delinquent and more of a subscriber to delinquent counterculture, if that makes sense. Because he's got the hair and he's got the modded uniform, but we don't really see him doing any like delinquent things. He gets worried when Koichi is cutting class, like, you know.
Yeah, like the most delinquent thing we see him is the uniform, the hair, and we first see him, he is doing the delinquent squat.
That's like it. Yeah, it's more performative as a culture thing than it is as a I'm a bad guy thing.
Apparently, he's beloved by fellow students.
Yeah, all the girls are into it. I think it's like more of a fashion statement.
he doesn't have any problems with the other guys, unless they make fun of his hair. There's no issue that we get, of like that usual trope of like the teacher hounding you.
Yeah.
They set him apart from Jotaro right away, only by having him be like young and hair trigger, but by pointing out, like, from the first episode that he is afraid of things. He doesn't like reptiles. And then it comes up later, he doesn't like ghosts. Nuh-uh. Like, he will straighten up out of a situation if he can, which is great. But he's not a coward or anything like that.
Yeah, he's
just like a rational human being.
He's much more impulsive than Jotaro is.
Yeah.
Like, he's... I mean, based on a number of things we saw in the first half of the show, most especially when dealing with the first villain, we can see that he will come up with plans very, very quickly, and he will execute them. But unlike Jotaro, he doesn't really have a backup plan. He's, okay, I've got an idea, let's do this. Hey, it worked. Oh no, it didn't work.
He does come off as his age.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate.
He comes off as Joseph Joestar's son.
Like he's also like much more emotive. He doesn't have the same poker face that Jotaro has. I can't see Josuke pulling off any of the plans necessarily they did with either of the Darby brothers.
Mm-hmm.
No. No.
He wears his heart on his sleeve, and that's literal.
It's actually on his lapel.
Fair. It's there. That's all I'm saying.
Next
then this character tendency is reflected in his stand and the fact that it heals people, right? But not himself.
It can be used to heal people, but what we see it do is it can change things. It can take them apart, it puts them back together, and it can put them back together the way they're supposed to be, or it can put them back together very wrong.
But we're introduced to it by him healing a turtle.
That's true.
Even though he had just been saying, oh, I really don't like turtles, get it away from me. He's not going to let that poor turtle die. Animal abuse. Hello, Jojo. And then Jotaro points out to him, this power that your stand can do, the fact that it can heal people. It's like it's too good for this world, but even it can't heal death. And there's that very touching moment when he's unable to save his grandfather. And I appreciated that moment between Josuke and Jotaro specifically because it was just highlighting the differences between them again. And that Jotaro has been there where he's, lost people. And
the last time we saw Jotaro a few episodes earlier, he was mourning like his entire party that he'd gone with.
Jotaro is still not like emotive, but you can tell that he's feeling what Josuke's feeling in that moment, and they connect. Like, actually, there's never a problem with Jotaro and Josuke connecting. And then the show kind of teases like whether or not Josuke will have trouble connecting to Joseph because this is his absent father who has not been there his whole life, and he obviously does struggle with it a little bit, but he also doesn't hesitate to reach out and try and make that connection, which is another reason I love him.
Yeah.
Joseph is as extra as ever. God.
Yeah. We don't get a lot of Joseph in this block of episodes. He shows in fairly late, but he is definitely like he starts out being apparently senile, although again, because this is Joseph, there is a certain degree of how much of this is, yes, he's actually
right.
Losing fact, how much of this is him being an obnoxious ass. Because when we have like the episode following his introduction, his first big episode following his introduction, with the introduction of Octung Baby.
I love Invisible Baby.
The Invisible Baby episode. Joseph is like he's fully in it, and he's very aware of what's going on. He's the first to notice the invisible baby with a stand. He's first to note it. He's able to put together a lot of the plan for dealing with that situation.
Still very sharp.
But
also still an incredible drama queen. This man did not hesitate to slit his wrists
to color the water so that they could find the invisible baby.
God damn it, Joseph.
And the entire time, he's telling his son, remember me fondly.
I still look cool for you. God damn it, Joseph.
And of course, we do get a few oh no's and oh my gods with this as well.
Yes, we do. I mean, this is how I knew that like this show had me in a chokehold, because like the first time we watched this season, the moment I saw Joseph show up on screen, I was just screaming. I was like, oh my God!
That old man. Where's my cane? That That's it, right next to your hand. Oh, thank you.
Speedwagon bros continue to do their duty.
It was the best waifu in anime.
The best.
Speedwagon.
Let's talk about the Joe Bro of the season, Okuyasu.
Yes. Oh yes.
I love characters like this, and I blame Kuwabara from Yu Yu Hakusho.
Yeah, he's absolutely got Kuwabara's specific level of himbo energy.
Yeah.
Hero of heart and dumb of ass. As we like to say.
the way he gets shot by his own brother, and he looks at the screen and goes, "Bro!" I was just like, "Oh my god, this guy." So yeah, Okuyasu, lovable dumbass, usually comic relief, really tragic past.
Oh my god,
and present, kind of.
Yeah, like, he's another legacy of the previous story in that his father was one of Dio's many international, basically the people that worked for
henchmen.
Henchmen. And like he and his Okuyasu and his brother are the impetus behind the first start, is that his brother, let's start with
Keicho.
Keicho. Their father, who I don't think actually has a name.
Not yet. He does get a name.
Not yet.
Yeah.
His father is contaminated with Dio cells.
So when
which we have previously seen do horrifying things to human anatomy.
So when Dio died, the cells went out of control and sort of turned their father into kind of just this little mindless round gremlin.
It's very reminiscent of like the I'm blanking on the name now. The lowest level of devil in Dungeons and Dragons.
Lemure.
The Lemures, they're just like flesh blobs, essentially. Like, it's not quite that bad, but it's pretty bad.
But he has like a tremendous regenerative factor in that he basically can't die. So that's what Keicho has been doing. He's been using the artifact, the origin of stands, as is retconned in this, a magical bow and arrow, to give people stands in the hope that one of them can kill their dad and put him out of his misery. Which is just a whole thing.
Just a whole thing. That's a lot to deal with.
But Okuyasu's stand can do that.
Okuyasu is a very destructive stand that
the hand.
I think a lot of the fandom is wondering why he can't use it to its fullest potential. And it could be because he's just not intelligent enough to extrapolate the things he can do with it. Or it could be because he's too good-hearted to really...
truly weaponize
look into it. Yeah, exactly.
Because his stand can literally remove things from existence.
He says at one point that he has thought about what happens to the things that that his stand removes from existence, and it bothers him, and yeah, I get that. So his stand can remove anything from existence, including like the air in front of him, which gives him the ability to short range teleport, essentially.
Yeah.
Which is super cool. But apparently it is not enough to release his father from this mortal coil. Either that or he refused to try. Yeah. And the show doesn't go into that, but I could see that happening.
I mean, it would definitely sort of help explain Keicho's abusive behavior towards him.
Keicho's straight up abusive towards him. Keicho is the one coming up with all the plans, and Okuyasu just trying to be a good brother and go along with it. Okuyasu was originally presented as an antagonist, but this lasts for all of 5 minutes. Like it.
Yeah.
He cannot sustain villain energy.
He tries to do the delinquent thing. It like the delinquent fight thing. It doesn't go well, and you're like, okay, fine. I guess I'm a good guy now.
I was freaking out during this whole episode though, because it kind of starts with Koichi getting shot in the chest.
Neck.
With a bow and arrow. And he is lying there horrifically bleeding out. And Josuke is trying to get to him to heal him. And he can't because Okuyasu is in the way. And then Keicho drags Koichi away.
By the foot!
Leaving a blood trail. And you're like, Koichi is super dead, right? He is 100% dead right now.
Speaking of which, let's talk about Koichi, who is kind of the wooby, I guess.
Koichi is interesting. I'd say he has the most growth throughout the episodes of any of those main three characters. I mean, Okuyasu does come a long way, but he doesn't really have much of a personality shift, and I feel like Koichi becomes a lot more confident in himself.
Yeah, Koichi becomes he transforms from that very much non-combat support emotional character to essentially, that guy who stands, to your right-hand man, the one who stands next to you in battle.
Right-hand man.
Like,
Bro did survive, thank God.
Yep.
And he goes on. He's like the link in the next.
And all he needed was to get kidnapped by a girl at school who had a crush on him.
Oh man,
oh my God.
It took him a long time to snap. I will just say that.
He put up with so much more. Like he like Okuyasu is one of those genuinely good people. Like he knows he could have gotten out much earlier if he'd been willing to hurt somebody. Like not just physically, emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's kidnapped and his immediate first thought is remembering when he was talking to Josuke and Okuyasu, there's like, okay, there's a few things you can do. But essentially, the one he goes with is make her not be interested in you by being gross.
And it quickly becomes clear that she is cray-cray, and this will not work. She is an interesting character. So I think the span of episodes we watched stopped right before she came back into the picture.
Yeah, we did not get her return.
But they do explore her character a little more later. So we'll talk about her later. But
yeah,
she becomes more interesting. She starts out as very one-note, creepy, scary stalker.
Honestly, she would fit in perfectly as a Sailor Moon villain.
Wait, I'm thinking about it. She'd have to have way more fabulous outfits, but yeah.
I mean, which is impressive. We're saying way more fabulous outfits when we're talking about a character from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Yes, but she's a schoolgirl and she just wears the schoolgirl outfit for
her uniform.
Yeah, but her stand is essentially hair control. Medusa from Marvel's Inhumans. Yeah. But yeah, she can control her hair and can make it grow and can implant it into other people's scalps.
And then puppet them around, which is horrifying.
She's full on.
Now here's someone who has explored the possibilities of weaponizing their stand. Yeah, going back to what you were saying in the beginning, the Twin Peaks comparison, where like there's all these people that are walking around, and the schoolgirl Yukiko, she's one of the ones that we see wandering around from kind of the earliest episodes. And so you're like, okay, the background character might come up later. And then you like whenever the show focuses in on one of these background characters, things get nuts. Like you never know what's going on below the surface of all these average Morio dwellers.
My favorite one though, however, for character introduced in one episode is definitely the one where Okuyasu gets hungry when they're walking by an Italian restaurant.
Yes, that episode was great.
That's it. It's like it just hammers home the point that stand users are drawn to each other. These two cannot just strolling into a restaurant. It is going to turn into a horror show.
And I love the fact that there's all this Cronenbergian body horror coming out of him eating this food,
much.
but but it then like it always turns out well because oh, my back hurts. I eat this dish. Like, oh, I tear the muscles out of my back, but then they regenerate and I don't have back problems anymore. It's like you go in there and you eat something and you have fused vertebra, and then you have to reach out and back and yank out your spinal cord, a chunk of your spinal cord, which it heals,
right?
And then now you have a perfectly functional spine. That like that's how this works.
And it starts out disturbing and just progresses to full-on horror show.
And I think what helps make it work a lot is like at the end of each chunk of horror show, like, oh, he like not only
he's fine,
like not only is he like perfectly fine, he's like actively better than he was before.
It was worth the 30 seconds of extreme freak out, and now everything's great.
And they keep doing it.
They keep doing it. And then you think, okay, surely now they will reveal that this sinister Italian chef is doing something nefarious. No.
He and his stand, Pearl Jam.
He's great.
Just want to make people better through the power of food.
They're great.
Like,
and their berserk button is contaminating the kitchen, which is 100% accurate.
Like, Okuyasu is having the most terrible things happen to him while he's eating this food. He gets better, but... And Josuke is just increasingly freaking out. So he decides to go and find out what the hell this chef is doing in the kitchen. And he goes in, and the chef comes towards him, and he's like, oh God! And the chef picks something up, and it looks like he's about to bludgeon Josuke as he's bludgeoning. And then turns around and, no, he just hands him a bar of soap because he needs to wash his hands if he's going to be in the kitchen.
Now we're just describing the episode because it is so good.
Oh my God, this is the best.
Yeah.
Speaking of which,
this episode has nothing to do with anything, but it's amazing.
Like the chef, Trisardi, shows up later, but it's like a cameo. He does not add anything to this. He does not, advance the story.
It's just an amazing one-off.
It's an amazing episode.
And it also kind of gives us a little more insight into Okuyasu and how he's able to bounce back from all the trauma he's endured, because apparently he gets over things like that. Like,
well, better not think about that again.
Yeah, it all goes in the mind vault. We're all good. Oh man.
Speaking of which, these characters who are introduced somewhat out of the blue, the one character from this who gets like the most recurring appearances and spin-offs, Rohan Kishiribe. Or Kishiribe Rohan, depending on which order you want to go with, our manga artist.
How self-insert was this?
I hope not much, because that man is horrifying.
From what I understand, the creator of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure has been asked about, like, hey, how much of Kishiribe Rohan is you? And he says, not that much personality-wise. But
there's definitely some wish fulfillment going on there with how fast Rohan can complete his pages.
Yeah.
I respect that.
But yeah, he's very like interesting, flashy character. It sounds like he's gonna be one of the major recurring characters that since he and Josuke are the two characters who kind of stumble across what's clearly going to be our main mystery going into the second half of the show.
Yeah. The whole show really starts to focus in after that. Yeah.
Yeah. So as larger other story beats to discuss real quick. We have the introduction of the bow and arrow that people who get stabbed with it develop stands.
Or die.
People who survive getting
stabbed. People who survive getting stabbed with it become stand wielders. And apparently
or animals.
Or
animals.
I want to know, why did Keijo keep doing kill shots with this thing? Like, I need to find the power. Okay, shoot him in like the leg or the foot.
Sir.
Stop shooting in the neck and the chest.
Sir, are you in the archery club? You're surprisingly good with this thing.
Or bad. Maybe it was like just trying to wing.
I keep trying to shoot them in. I keep trying to shoot them in the knee, and I always end up hitting them in the throat or the lungs. I don't understand.
Now, they do point out that Keicho starts with criminals, right? He's aware that his dad was a criminal and aware to some degree that his dad is a little bit responsible for his own predicament. And he's also aware that it's a bad idea to shoot random people with arrows out of nowhere. So he starts with criminals. But then he kind of quickly gets frustrated and starts moving on to shooting random people and even animals.
Well, when you keep shooting serial killers and they keep killing people.
Yes, you might have realized that this was a problem.
Maybe he did.
Might have realized it. I mean, Keicho didn't strike me as unintelligent, even though this plan is objectively bonkers. He obviously has a lot to deal with. Now, did he deserve to die? Now, it's kind of interesting that he is killed when actually there's very little death or murder that happens in the show that is successful. There's a lot of attempted murder. But until you get to the second half of the show with the main mystery and the main killer, there's not a lot of... Like, it's more wacky shenanigans than it is seriously people dying left and right.
Disagree. It starts hard. And the first enemy stand user we meet is Angelo, who kills Josuke's grandpa.
That's true.
Right away.
They go to great lengths to establish how bad this guy is. Like Jotaro's whole spiel about him and all of his unspeakable crimes.
Yeah.
But then Josuke doesn't exactly kill him in retaliation. He gives him a fate worse than death, which is fine.
and then after we see a mysterious antagonistic figure who is killing people.
We'll just say severed hand guy.
Yeah, severed hand guy. And he comes up a couple times, but we don't really get into it with him, and he kind of fades into the background to the big extent, with focus being on the other stand wielders and that sort of thing. And again, they generally don't kill anyone. Even Rat, where Rat does a thing to some people in a rural farmhouse, which normally oh god,
yeah,
the only thing to do is to kill these people, put them out of their misery. But then it's no, it's wait, we have Crazy Diamond.
Crazy Diamond. Diamond solves a lot of problems and keeps things from getting too heavy a lot of times.
That does very much feel like a degree of Araki going, last season, the last arc was very dark. I'm going to start this one with still the body horror, but lighter. Either of his own volition or perhaps something from editorial suggesting, hey, can we dial it back?
Tone down the murders
a little bit. I could do that.
Now we have body horror, but it's good for your body. No.
I mean, yeah. And so we still have this sense of stand stuff and body horror related to that. What do we think about how, in terms of with the bow and arrow, in terms of the larger mythos of Dio and that sort of thing, and how stands are handled?
It allows for the continuation of the story.
I think it tracks. Yeah, I'm also inclined to not question it much, because it's it doesn't matter.
There was nothing about it earlier. I mean, it's very clearly a retcon, but it's not an unpleasant retcon, I'll say. It doesn't annoy you or hurt you or make you say that's bullshit. It's a retcon that allows us to continue the JoJo story if we want to keep using those great stands, because the stands are kind of great.
They do try and keep things consistent, though, with internal details. There's this one scene of Josuke taking off his shirt. You see that he has the star marking that all the Jo stars have, right? So, and Jotaro mentions once, what happened when his mother was in that coma, the whole thing that happened with Dio at the same time that Josuke was very sick as a child, that's what happened there. So I think it ties together in enough ways to make it plausible. I wasn't really bothered by the bow and arrow, because in a show this zany, are we really going to quibble at the introduction of a magic bow and arrow? Like,
not to mention, it definitely...
The bow and arrow has rules, too. It has to be that arrow. You have to recover it every time. You have to shoot it from that bow. Not everyone makes it.
Yeah, like... It does not break suspension of disbelief.
Can I say that one of my favorite details they added to the stand mythos this season was how Koichi's stand first manifests as an egg, and it has to hatch, and then it undergoes multiple evolutions like a Pokemon throughout the course of the show, because Koichi is growing and changing as a person, and so his spirit's manifestation is as well. I love that. It made perfect sense.
Yeah, this is definitely where we get into the territory of, like, where you can see of terms of JoJo influence on subsequent works, like the influence from here on, say, the Persona series.
Mm-hmm.
With basically the stand as persona, very much as persona here, and reflecting the person's psychology and their personal developments and that sort of thing.
Like a Yu-Gi-Oh character's deck.
David's put work into this metaphor, but I will cut him off here. Should we talk about the stand's designs really quickly? I think a couple of them were very clearly Akira Toriyama inspired.
Oh yeah, especially Echoes.
Echoes, honestly, Chili Pepper looked exactly like one of the forms of Lavos from that Akira Toriyama designed for Chrono Trigger, which might be my favorite video game of all time. I love that game so much.
Quick shout out to the fact that Chili Pepper's user was just as extra as Chili Pepper himself.
Oh yes, he breaks his head, like, he has his pinky broken or dislocated, fixes it, and then does a massive guitar solo.
Instead of walk it off, it's play it off.
Express how he fixes it not by putting it back, but just through sheer willpower, so that he can rock.
Yep. I was like, you know what? Respect. I like this guy.
Yeah.
Even though he's trying to kill my beloved Joseph, you have to respect that. Yeah. Some of the other ones were interesting. Like, I think he kind of branched out a little bit in terms of stand designs. We already talked about Echo's kind of evolving. But then the chef's was a bunch of little things instead of one big form. I thought that was interesting. Yukiko's didn't really have an astro form. It was just her hair. Yep.
Harvest, just a flood of tiny little guys.
Yeah, lots of tiny little guys. More of a swarm, really.
Yeah.
What does that say about you that your soul is a swarm?
I mean, there's also this isn't our only stand builder who has a swarm type, because we also have Bad Company.
Yep, Bad Company.
Which is
what an interesting one.
I actually need to check now.
What they translated it as?
No, I want to check.
Worst Company.
No, because the thought I had is, okay, when did Toy Story come out related to this?
The Army Men.
Yes.
My brain just went straight there.
Yeah, like that's where I went to. Is that the like, hey, this reminds me of the Army Men from Toy Story. And so Toy Story came out in 1995 in November. And so I'm gonna check Wikipedia and see if Diamond Is Unbreakable. Okay, so it was not contemporary. Diamond Is Unbreakable started in 1992.
Earlier.
So, and did not finish until 1995. So,
but I also think it was common for people who were starting to create works in the 90s that they grew up with toy soldiers. So
yeah,
I see the common through line there.
Yeah.
And the con man, whose name I can't remember, whose stand manifested as locks on people's bodies. That was interesting.
Oh yeah. Looking him up now. That was
an actual delinquent.
it's Tamami Kobayashi. His dad just shows up as a fancy lock, which
I was absolutely delighted with how he became basically Koichi's minion after that. He has two modes. He's either boss or he's henchman.
So I do have little thoughts about the choice of closing credits music this time.
So my gosh.
So like
so into it.
Yeah, like I like the song, which was I Want You by Savage Garden.
My God.
I genuinely this is the first one that I genuinely listened to when it was when the time period, and I'm like, yeah.
I can sing the song still. I remember it.
And the closing credits like work nicely with the like fitting in with the geography and of the setting of the town of Morio to play well with the idea that this is we are much more localized in where our story is, as opposed to the road trip of Stardust Crusaders, or the playing into the origins of the mask and everything with season 1 with Battle Tendency and Phantom Blood. But I will say my one thing that I miss is that all the way back we were having at the beginning, the music helped transition into the closing credits in an interesting way, like with Roundabout. And
I think it hit peak at the end of Stardust Crusaders there.
Yeah, and we had a bit of that with Stardust Crusaders, where like the episode would end and we would have the animation on the clap for Walk Like an Egyptian, and like the white going in cleanly into the credits, and for that, and we didn't have like that sort of lead in mood transition with Last Train Home, but it did give play in the sense of we're at the end of the journey, still a bit of sense of melancholy and that sort of thing.
I do think a lot of effort was spent on animating that sequence for the end credits.
Yeah, and while thematically the actual end credits animation works and the song is engaging and fits with the period that the show that the storyline of the manga was made, it does. I will say, I'm missing that sort of elegant transition from the story itself into the closing credits in terms of the transitioning that mood and tone. And I don't know if there's like another song from this era that I would pick that would do the same sort of thing necessarily, but okay, I just a little thing I miss.
I'm just thinking of all the other songs from the late 90s, and it's like,
yeah,
there's so many terrible options.
Like songs from the early to late to mid 90s, depending on where they want to go, when the manga was or when the. But yeah, but like it's like it's a combination of like, hey, what works, and also what could they afford?
A good consideration.
That's good. That's a good point. I'm like,
interesting to note that the opening credits have changed.
Oh yeah,
but the ending ones haven't.
No, the ending ones do.
No,
the song hasn't.
They didn't change the song. They included a few like more characters, I think, in the.
Okay, yeah, but switched openings. Yes.
Yeah, because it does bear mentioning that while we've split the season in half, this series went as 3 different cores. So doing it like so we've done a core split. Although we did also get a music mix change also for the first opening, where for the episodes with Yukako, they had a different theme. They had a remix of the theme song. The EDM remix of Crazy Noisy Bizarre Town. Which works.
I think the opening and ending are fun. Excuse me.
All right. So, any other thoughts on the first half of Diamond is Unbreakable?
I think I've ended up. I think I'm one of those people who prefer Diamond Is Unbreakable to Stardust Crusaders. Stardust Crusaders, I fell in love with the show. I get it, and it's awesome. But there's something about Diamond Is Unbreakable that I can't get over. Like how cool the stylization is, how approachable the new art style is, how funny it often is. Not that Stardust Crusaders didn't have its moments of humor, but I don't know. I'm just always laughing.
It also is the first one that really moved the story beyond Dio and the Joestars. Like, the Joestars are always going to be our protagonists, but this is the first one that wasn't like directly tied to Dio in some way. Like, is it tied? Yeah, of course. It's JoJo. Everything's tied to Dio. But like, if it wasn't for Dio, the whole Joestar family would probably still be as extra as ever, but there'd be a lot less tragedy and superpowered heroics.
I saw an amazing fan comic where it was Okuyasu going to a therapist, and they were like, let's explore the roots of your trauma. And then it has Okuyasu talking about all this stuff in a bunch of speech bubbles. And then the therapist says, so at the end of the day, I think we can agree the root of your trauma. And then he rips off his disguise and goes, is me, Dio! But so, honestly, you could replace Okuyasu with any character and it would work.
Yeah. Well, one thing to talk about, actually, outside of the series itself, is you watched the live action film.
We did.
Yeah, we did. They oh my god, the stylists did their best. They did their best, man.
The adaptation of the first part, I've given up hope on getting a part 2 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Diamond is Unbreakable live action. Especially since the guy who plays Okuyasu in that, McKenryu, is now playing Roronoa Zoro in the live action One Piece.
I love that guy.
Oh, he's fantastic.
He's great. So was it fun? Yes.
I don't.
But was it good? I'm not sure I'm prepared to say that. Like, they had a lot to adapt and fit in, and even this, like, they obviously meant it to be a part 1, but even so, part 1 is a lot of content.
It's weird because it's only it's not a lot, but at the same time they stuff in a bunch, and it's one of those adaptations where I watch it and I'm like, did I like that? Yeah. Did I think that was strictly necessary? I don't know if it actually added anything to the JoJo verse, as it was.
And we actually had this discussion with one of the other Netflix live anime adaptations, Yu Yu Hakusho. We were like, this feels unnecessary. You know, why wouldn't you just tell someone to go watch Yu Yu Hakusho? It's amazing.
Like, which is very different than their adaptation for One Piece.
Which is actually really great.
Which was great. And it did make changes that made sense. And it's telling the same story, but it's telling the same story differently.
I would argue that in the case of One Piece, it was necessary because nobody got time to watch hundreds of episodes.
1,000.
Yeah.
It's like, I think they're up to...
I'm just saying. Yu Yu Hakusho was long, but it was not that long. I
mean, Yu Yu Hakusho will always have a very special place in my heart.
It's interesting as well, because the director for the live action film is Takeshi Miike, who has a wide range in terms of his subject matter and the stuff that he's done. On the one hand, he did this. He has done live action adaptations of other anime and video games. Like there's a Yakuza or Like a Dragon movie. He did a live action Blade of the Immortal. He's done a live action Phoenix Wright. On the other hand, he's the guy who did Audition.
That movie haunts me. Oh my gosh, this is one of the most disturbing films I've ever watched. And it's not even that anything particularly disturbing happens up to the last, 10 minutes? Just the vibes are so dread. Like,
And he did Ichi the Killer. So like it's wide range in terms of the of his tonal stuff. So like, but he he also cranks movies out very very rapidly to tie things back to Corman a little bit. Like he's done like 34. He's done over 100 movies, and that he has directed since 1991.
A lot of work.
So
that's averaging 3 a year.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Like some of these are direct to video, some of these are television series related stuff. But yeah, like he is like I would say he's kind of able to put out the Corman quickie, so to speak. But on the other hand, like he's doing like high profile stuff too. Like he did a remake of 13 Assassins. He did in 2010. He did the remake of Harakiri in 2011. So
the film was like, I don't really remember anything specific about the direction of it, so I think it was fairly standard. They do have to rely on special effects to do the stands, obviously. I feel like the stands were kind of a letdown. Hard to do without a big budget, and make it look decent. And also the designs of the stands do not lend themselves to a live action realism style. I think Bad Company came off the best.
Because they were able to look like toys.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of liked how they played with textures on Crazy Diamond. The hand looked, honestly, like a bad Ultraman cosplay.
Yeah, one didn't come off great, but that is a tough design to execute in realism.
how did they handle Heaven's Door and Kisaribe Rohan? Because I know that Kisaribe Rohan, in addition to getting a spin-off anime miniseries, he's also gotten a live action spin-off as well.
I don't think he was in the
Rohan
first
was
one.
in the movie.
Yeah, I don't remember him.
Okay.
That's something right there.
All right. So
it seemed to be largely concerned with Keicho and Okuyasu, which, I mean, makes sense. They were where all the source of the conflict was coming from.
Yeah, they... yeah. It's...
Okay, so if they didn't get that far for
they didn't. Like, the actual story progression didn't last much long past the Okuyasu brothers. But they also, however, tied in the serial killer right away. So
that's true.
Okay. Because like I knew that they'd done a live action Rohan J drama. And so I had thought perhaps they included some of him in the film to have that actor cast and then spin him off. But apparently not.
I think he was in it.
No, okay. I'm looking at the cast to see if I missed something, and no one's, listed as Rohan Kishibe.
Oh, Jun Kunimura as Josuke's grandpa, though.
Oh.
That guy's always good.
Yeah.
Very good.
So I guess that what we'll have to do is at some point, either I or you or both of us will need to, with the next block, need to watch the, if it's available, the Thus Spake Kisaribe Rohan J-drama and see how that turned out. Because Heaven's Door feels like it'd be very tricky to do in live action.
Right? Oh, your skin is peeling off and there's pages underneath it. Oh my god.
Yeah.
How would that even... Yeah, I don't know. Cool.
But yeah, so
apparently it's on Netflix.
Well, that's the animated one.
Oh, that's the animated. Okay.
All right, I'll have to do some digging to see if the live action one is available.
Lots of popular anime popping up on Netflix, though, if I may sideline for a moment.
Oh my gosh. And Disney Plus now has Hulu's entire catalog of anime on their main site.
Yep.
All the streaming services collapsing together.
So including all the Viz stuff, so you get your Ranma 1/2.
Oh my god!
Which means
I'm worried about watching that show.
Which means that now at last you can get animated boobs on Disney Plus.
Was
In any case, next time we'll be covering the back half of Diamond Is Unbreakable. That is episode 20 all the way to 39.
Now that the Joe Bros have assembled, it is time to point them at a significant problem.
And there will be much punching.
There will be much punching.
Ora.
I like how Diamond says Dora. Maybe that's why Jojo didn't have to really explain things too much to Josuke when they first met. They were already connected on a spiritual level. They just get each other.
I mean, Crazy Diamond does look a lot like Star Platinum.
Looks like him, punches like him too. Nice.
Like, yeah. Your power is definitely more useful than mine, Josuke, but it's not as powerful.
Good grief, I could stop time.
All right.
It's only for half a second. That's enough often.
It's usually enough, yeah.
Yep.
Although by the end, he has been putting some training back into it, so it definitely does extend the duration.
It just cracks me up that whenever he stops time, he says Star Platinum the world, which takes up a good 2 seconds, right when you'd want time to stop.
And he doesn't even do it as fun as Dio did. Stop. Wonderful.
That's because that's not his style.
I know. He's just too much. He's too calm to properly use the world. If he was more extra, it'd be better.
Yeah, that's true.
Longer lasting.
Joseph for the dramatics.
Oh, no!
Joseph, who is now bringing an invisible baby home to poor, suffering Susie Q. I'm surprised she hadn't thrown him out of the house yet.
You know
Although
what?
they're not Mr. Kondo, she might throw him out the window.
Out the window! He'd be fine.
I'm waiting for Invisible Baby to be the next JoJo protagonist.
That'd be amazing.
All right. But we will catch up on Joseph, Jotaro, and Josuke and the Invisible Baby next month.
Woo!
In the meantime, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please rate and review it on your podcatching platform of choice. It helps people find us, and that's how the whole discovery algorithm thing goes. And because the Libsyn automatically posts the audio versions up on the YouTube channel, if you're listening to this there, thank you. Please like, subscribe, ring the bell, etc. Again, helps us people find us there.
And shout out to our Malaysian fans, where we are surprisingly popular.
At least in the iTunes store.
Yeah. Sup, Malaysia?
And if you would want to toss a few bucks to help cover hosting costs, we have a Patreon at patreon.com/count0or. Patreon backers gets access to all my stuff generally about a week or so in advance. Sometimes less. Like usually this was a pretty quick turnaround for the podcast episodes. Also, we have Ko-fi at ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/count0. It's the word 0 for both of those. If you can't do a monthly patron thing but want to toss a few bucks my way, that's perfectly fine. And that's a good place to do that. And we will be back next month.
Email us if you have questions or just want to chat.
Of course. Also, yes, if you have thoughts on the series as a whole or particular episodes or what have you, we have an email address at animeexplorations@gmail.com.
Or if you want to suggest something for us to watch.
Yep. All right. We will be back next month.
Hope everybody is having a good month. See you next time.